Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me, everyone. I am so excited to have this panel here because, this is a show that has been a couple of months in the making, and I am so happy to have Vice Rhino, Mr.
Hello.
Bear,
Hi.
Jenna Belk,
Hello.
and Jim Majors. And it is an honor to have each and every one of you here. And as always, when we're doing episodes of Why Are You Here, which is a show that I do once a month, and I try to get different content creators on, and I specifically try to find people that you don't normally see together, so that people that normally would watch one of us get exposed to someone that you may not have seen before. And so if you see someone in the show that you haven't seen before and you like their content, or you like what they have to say, look in the description of the show. There are links to everyone's channels in the description, and then go and subscribe to them. Make sure you're just subscribed to everyone that's here. And so what we do on each of these episodes is we talk a little bit about what we do and why we do it. And I'm going to go around starting with Mr. Bear and ending with Vice Rhino, and giving everyone about 5 to 10 minutes to talk about either what you do on your channel, what you do as an activist, what you do as a, just an all-around good person, some maybe charitable events that you do, and then why you do it. And if anyone on the panel has questions for them, please feel free to jump in while they're talking. It's not like they have exclusive rights and you need to wait. Go ahead and jump in and ask, and we'll discuss everything. And there's no time limit either. If you need more than 10 minutes, go ahead and take it. And then after each person's had a chance to talk a little bit about what they do and why they do it, then we'll just have some time for free conversation and discussion. So with that, Mr. Bear, tell us a little bit about your channel, what you do, and why, and any other thing that you want to talk about.
Sure. Yeah, look, thanks for having me. And all of these people are partly responsible for me being here in very different ways. Like I was saying prior, Jenna inspired me to be a bit more calm in my approach to talking to Christians and theists. I think she's the calm and curious yin to Matt's more abrasive yang, but they each have their own talents. But I try to infuse that into my videos. I take the occasional stab at street preachers and videos online. I generally respond to videos online that I find interesting and curious and deserve some sort of response. I started off being probably a little bit too abrasive, and my channel is evolving into something a little bit more different, maybe a bit more tempered. And I'm just trying to introduce a bit of humor with a bit of knowledge to what people present online, and just counter their claims with something that resembles discerned facts rather than just hyperbole and rhetoric. So, and in real life, I'm a teacher as well. I do some woodwork, metalwork teaching, and so I try to teach kids how to discern information online. And being a parent, I try to teach that as well. And one of the things we do is we show kids in year 7, which is sort of the equivalent of freshmen, I think, in the US, around the 13, 14-year-old age bracket. We show them things like the History of Robots website, which if you Google Victorian robots, it comes up with a website that shows things like the Steam Man and the Automatic Man. And we tell them, well, have a look at this and just tell us what you think about these robots. These are the first robots that were ever made in the 1800s. And then we look at how they figure out if it's true or not, and how they investigate. And so it's a completely fabricated website, of course, but it looks really convincing. So I think part of the reason, like you say, why we're here, part of the reason why I think I've given myself that I'm here is to teach how to be discerning with information. I'm not sure how else to phrase it, but that I think is important. It's not instilled in people. It doesn't seem to be instinctive. As we grow older, we realize that to be discerning is something that you learn rather than something that's just a given.
I think also being discerning is different for your generation than it was for my generation, because of primarily the internet. You know, in one of the videos I released recently, I talked about how when I would hear biblical claims, without the internet, it was nearly impossible for me to check some of them out. And
Absolutely.
that's part of the reason that I believed them for so many years. And I think your generation having the internet to look these things up right away, it's a lot easier for you to go, nah.
Yep, absolutely. However, there is a distinction between good websites and bad websites. So that's part of the reason why I like to teach information technology, is to discern where are the good sources, where are the bad sources, how to tell the difference between them.
Is there a way that you can summarize how to do that?
Essentially, it's looking at a few factors. So who created the website, find out who they were, find out where the age of the website as well. Just cross-referencing those sorts of things. Who made it, probably why and when. And it's just a step looking outside the website, and then looking at other sources using the same phrases as on that website to be a bit more discerning. Yeah, there's a few things there. I was doing it last year, so I have to sort of relapse into my memory. But yeah, that's that's probably the starting point.
Awesome.
Okay, very good. Jenna, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, I'm kind of on a hiatus at this moment, but I am doing several shows, and I'm going to try to make this not too drawn out, just because I'm kind of all over the place. But overall, basically, actually, I'm curious, is everybody here like deconverted? Did everybody here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So, as you know, at least y'all, deconverting basically puts a fire under your ass. And I've discovered this world of skeptics, having started volunteering at the ACA. You know, I found out I had been searching for God's purpose for my entire life. And I realized after deconverting that I get to define my purpose. I get to decide who I want to be. And I decided I wanted to be seen and actually be a more helpful person. So I started volunteering. And I started volunteering at the ACA, started doing the Atheist Experience with Matt. And after really calming myself down with, it's funny, you say that you got your calmness from me. I got my calmness from Anthony Magdabasco, because he just blew my mind with how calm and sincere he was with his questions. So everything almost that I've gotten in that sense has been from him, and from Tracy too, Tracy Harris. But anyway, so I do that, and that's probably once a month. I also have my own shows on my own YouTube channel where I do Atheistasis, where basically I do kind of interviews of random people, some people with degrees that are professors, some people that are just friends, some people, you know, just a variety of opinions and perspectives, because I realize that it's not only professors that matter, you know. While I don't want to educate people with the people that don't have degrees, I want to at least share perspectives and experiences. And so then we came up with the Ethan and Jenna show on Sundays. Actually, no, we just moved it to Thursdays at 4 p.m. Central. But that is to try to normalize conversation about mental health, because I realize that that's not only just a new thing that we've studied in science, but it's a new thing that people are open to talking about, because it used to be everything's keep it in the family and keep it to yourself and get over it. And so now, since we've learned that it's actually helpful to talk about it, we're trying to basically normalize that conversation about mental health and a certain topic that is difficult to talk about. Like we did mental health and death once, you know, just kind of allowing people to call in as a peer call-in show and share their experiences and kind of get things off their chest and say what they think that people need to know about that kind of thing. So we're actually trying to work with some professionals to get them on there to help us to make sure that we are, accurate whenever there is information passed around. But then I also have on Twitch my Genesis morning meditations at 10 a.m. Central, where I just meditate for 15 minutes, and not really as a meditation guide, more as just a meditation buddy, because I had so many friends that are curious and don't know how to, and they're like, well, how do you start? And I'm like, well, I can't really tell you. So you just, I'll do it, and then you can do it with me, and you can kind of make it your own, and I'll just kind of tell you what I'm doing while I'm doing it, and then you can kind of go from there. Then I also have Carrot Noises that's going to be on Tuesdays at 4, coming up when I get back into it, which will probably be next month. And that's where I paint live. And because Twitch is kind of like a video game and chat kind of thing. And so since I don't really play video games, I like to paint. So I decided to paint and chat. So I've gotten some good feedback on that, that it's just a fun, chill, you get a break from the philosophy talk kind of thing, and embrace your creative side. And then I have another show that I'm working on. I think it's going to be called, I'm not going to tell you what it's going to be called yet, but basically this is going to be like my Uber baby, where this is where I'm putting everything together, and I'm basically going to be putting my thoughts together and sharing my own experiences, but as kind of the humanist, because there's so many skeptics and there's so much skepticism that's being promoted, and that's awesome, and it's being done in a kind way. But I kind of want to start promoting the reverse, the more humanist skeptic. So kind of putting the humanism first, and kind of, I don't know.
Have you met Esther?
She's actually been on a couple of my streams. I love her comments whenever she comments things. I haven't seen her stuff yet, but I'm very intrigued.
I was just wondering, because she tends to emphasize the humanist side as well.
That's probably why I love her so much. So. Awesome. But yeah, that's basically my thing, is just kind of to promote humanism and the skepticism with it.
You have some big news on a personal note too.
I do. That's why I'm out of breath. I'm like, talking. This talking thing takes a lot of effort. I am basically due in 2 weeks. So that'll be fun. That's why I'm on my little hiatus, is because this pregnancy brain thing it's really hit and miss when I can use my brain. So I just don't want to let anybody down.
Baby brain.
I think it gets worse after the kids come out.
Oh, don't tell me that. I keep telling you, buddy, once the baby comes.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Congrats.
Thank you.
It is. Congrats. Exciting.
Thank you. Really, I'm so excited.
But then you realize they're here every single day after that.
I was just thinking that today, actually. I was like, man,
it really hits you.
And a little bit more every day until it's all gone.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, at least, so is it reasonable to just kind of give myself like this 18-year countdown? Like, is that like a reasonable thing, or is that no?
I mean, 16 seems reasonable to me, but they won't let me. So
just recently, I had the realization that there's probably less time in between now and when my kids move out of the house than there is in between now and when I first had kids. And
geez.
That's like, on the one hand, that's kind of exciting. On the other hand, it's like, no, they can't grow up.
Doesn't it make you just want to start all over?
For me, the college years were the shortest years ever. It seemed like, it took so long till they graduated from high school. But as soon as they graduated from high school, I turned around, they were graduating from college.
Wow.
Well, there's a Trace Atkins song. So I grew up in the Bible Belt. And there's a Trace Atkins song called "You're Gonna Miss This" that would play on CMT a lot when I was growing up, and it just really, really hit home with really just trying to appreciate each moment as it comes. Oh, thank you, African Humanist.
I love that song. Yeah, you're gonna want this back when it's gone.
Yeah, and it's really well done. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to, this whole like kicking thing. Like I asked my OB a question that she had apparently never been asked before. And she like laughed at me. I asked her, I said, has anybody ever had organ damage from kicking? Because they literally kick your stomach and they kick your ass from the inside. And I'm like, this hurts. Has anybody ever had any problems from it? She's like, no. I'm like, oh, okay.
I've heard that the rib shots aren't fun.
Oh no.
Ooh,
No, it's worse when he hits my spine anywhere.
Oof.
ow.
But I was just talking to my BFF today, and she was like, just try to, really appreciate those kicks. I'm like, okay.
Appreciate kicks. Got it.
I'll appreciate the movement, but
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
like, this might not be one of those you're gonna miss it moments.
you're right. But yeah, that's that. Been learning a lot about secular parenting, actually, from this community. Has anybody found Parenting Beyond Belief podcast?
No, not yet.
I found it too late, unfortunately. I wish I would have found it years ago.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, I recommend checking that out if anybody's curious and new to non-religion in your life and don't know how to raise kids now, because you used to have your church as your guide or your upbringing, which I don't really want to repeat.
Right.
So
Yeah, like my parents spanked me, for instance, and I mean, I was I was a Christian while I had 3 of 4, and I mean, there was a period where I had spanked my kids, and I look back on it and I'm like, what was I thinking? Like,
how does that? If you don't mind me asking, how do you deal with that kind of like
guilt?
Yeah, that regret.
I don't. I mean, it's something that still bothers me, and it's something that I don't know that I'll ever be able to forgive myself for.
Do you ever talk to them about it? Like,
Yeah,
tell
they're
them
just
that you regret it?
like, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay,
Kids
well,
are
that's
resilient little
good.
buggers.
You probably didn't do it too much or too bad, to really
No.
affect them then. Because
Right. Well,
from my experience, I was a bad kid.
Oh.
So I was spanked a lot. So there's some weird stuff there.
Yeah, I was a good kid who got spanked just whenever they felt like it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear that.
Sorry. Yeah.
So I guess I should probably do mine.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, I was about to tell you that you're next, Jim.
Okay. So I was raised Pentecostal. I was Pentecostal for most of my life, and had always wanted to be a pastor. I went to school to be a pastor, and it was in grad school that I began to lose my faith. And towards the end, I was a pastor at my family church, and there was about a 2-year period where I really, really struggled with all of this evidence that I was faced with, through biblical studies, that was on the other side of the scale from what I was used to standing on. And I noticed that pile getting bigger and bigger, and the scale tilting more that way. And it became so much that I could no longer believe. I couldn't choose to believe. It was just, there's just so much evidence that was just juxtaposed to it that I just couldn't rationalize it any longer. And for a while, I quit school, and I was trying to get my head together. I announced to the congregation that I was an atheist. I figured that was the best way to do it, was just to write a letter, and instead of doing a sermon, read the letter and kill 2 birds with 1 stone, because I figured I already know they're judgmental, and that they are divisive, and they are they're not fond of people who aren't like them or who don't believe like them. And so I already knew what I was going to have to deal with, and I didn't want to have to hurt one person's feelings, like my parents or something, and then have them tell everybody, and then just it become one big rumor. So I wanted everybody to get it from me. And after that, I went through this period where I ran as far away from Christianity as possible. I ran to the mythicist position. I like I said, I stopped going to school for a while, and I was at a loss. There was no longer anything that I could apply my education to, my my credits, I didn't know what route to take with my life. And so I decided, as I started to heal, as I started to not just forgive myself for putting myself through that, but being able to forgive my parents and forgive, the pastor, because I realized that they were sincere believers and that they really thought they were doing the right thing by raising me that way. So I decided to go back to school because I learned that I still loved the Bible. I still really appreciated this deep, getting this deeper understanding of the geopolitical situation in this ancient world and these different times, and just how the text was compiled and how it was written and why it was written, and all of these literary devices and different genres of literature within the Bible. I just realized that there's so much more than what's on the page, that there's 100,000 times, millions times more inside of the page. And so I decided that I wanted to finish. And I will be graduating with my PhD in Hebrew Bible this summer, writing my dissertation on the book of Daniel. And what I do is I try to make accessible the stuff that I learn. I try to make good scholarship accessible, just because there's so much bad scholarship out there. And I'm not talking about just apologists and Christian sectarians. That there's so many secular people out there and so many non-Christians who are putting so much, so many bad arguments out there, and they're convincing arguments. Like people like D.M. Murdoch. They put forth these things, and just reading them, you're like, oh yeah, wow, that's really convincing. But unless you go and you check yourself, then you never know, and it's impossible to check everything. And so what I try to do is, while simultaneously trying to educate both Christians and non-Christians about the ancient world and the cultures that in which the Bible grew up out of, I also try to put gates in this fence that's long divided this atheist and Christian line. Because when I became an atheist, I realized that my whole social life was gone. And as a Pentecostal, I hadn't been on the internet. I hadn't, we didn't have a TV in our house until until my late teens. So I thought I was alone. I'd heard of atheists, but I never met one. To me, they were like unicorns, like they just don't exist. And I was really depressed and worried, because for a while I thought, like I'm like one in a million. And then when I left religion, then I found the wonderful world of YouTube. And I found that there is this greater community of people, some wonderful people, some people that have the potential to be wonderful people, some people who are totally just bags of garbage. But I saw a niche that needed help, that needed integration, that needed positive input, not just scholarship, and not just education, but kindness. There was from my point of view, there was a serious deficit in that, especially when it comes to reaching across the fence. And so I just wanted to make it more accessible, and to just get everybody to realize that in the end, whether you think that there's a life after this or not, whether you think that there's a God who's going to punish me or reward you or not, that until that point, we're in this together. And yeah, just trying to make people realize that.
Do you target more theists or atheists?
More theists.
More theists.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things you mentioned, Daniel, and I thought that was kind of interesting. I was in a discussion with someone the other day, and his big proof for the existence of God was all the prophecies in Daniel. And I see that Dr. Josh is in the chat. And I pulled out about 3 of Dr. Josh's videos and said, check out this and this and this. I don't know if he ever actually watched any of them, but at least they were there. And it was a good resource.
Josh is my best friend. He's a great guy. But yeah, I have seen his videos.
And last but not least, Vice Rhino, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I have a YouTube channel that is known as Vice Rhino. That's my main thing at the moment. I also release it as a podcast because I intentionally design my videos to be possible to listen to without necessarily watching, so you don't lose anything, at least not anything significant if you listen to it without watching. That was something that was actually my first physical letter that I got when I opened a PO box. Was someone from, I think it was Germany, writing me a letter saying, thanks, I love your videos, but sometimes you refer to visual stuff and you don't describe it well, and I'm visually impaired, so that makes me feel left out. And so now I make an effort to include that, and was like, well, as long as I'm doing that, may as well make it even more accessible by releasing a podcast. And I release videos every Monday and Friday and every other Wednesday. Usually it's dealing with creationism stuff or biblical proof sort of thing. I'm kind of having a growing fascination with early Christianity. I just finished reading Bart Ehrman's Lost Christianities, and it's fascinating how many different sects of Christianity were around before a single word of the New Testament was written. And Frank Turek will actually say that. Like, he'll come out and say that in his apologetics, and being like, oh, well, Christianity would be true even without the New Testament because, Christianity, there were thousands of Christians before the New Testament was written. It's like, yeah. And that's when all these different stories came out. And you want me to believe one over the other one just because it was the one that won out? But anyway, I'm finding it rather fascinating, and I actually just finished uploading a video that does talk a little bit about the Book of Daniel. I kind of skipped most of it because I already have like a half-hour video specifically on the prophecy that was being brought up. But one of the things I do mention is that one of the ways that we date the Book of Daniel is by seeing, like, this is when the prophecies are accurate, and then when it gets to chapter 11 or 12 is when it stops being accurate. Not when it gets, but like when it gets to the events that happened in between 167 164 BCE, that's when it stops getting accurate, and it was chapters 10 through 12 that was specifically referring to. So like that's actually a dating method for some of the books of the Bible. So yeah, I just barely mentioned Daniel in that video. I also upcoming, I do have I'm going to be launching a new podcast. This one's going to be podcast only, where I read the Bible to my daughter. I actually just ordered a very ornate, illustrated ESV Bible to do this with. I don't know why it matters that it's ornate and illustrated for an audio format, but I wanted an actual physical book to read. And I want the ESV because I have this Bible here that's NIV, and it's pre-2011. They baked apologetics into their translation in that version. So I wanted something a little bit more accurate to the text, which ESV is kind of like, from my understanding, is it treads the line pretty well between being written in a way that you can understand it and actually remaining faithful to the likely original intent of the authors, or like of the Hebrew.
Did you get 50 Shades of Grey as well?
No, actually, that now that you mention it, I have occasionally been like, do I really want to do, like, is that a lot of that material's not really suitable for children? But at the same time, it's like maybe the act of reading this stuff that's not suitable for children to a child will kind of help people understand why it's not, I guess. I don't know. That's kind of a weird way to look at it, but
may I ask what your reasoning is behind it? Like is it like to, like, just for like the mythology?
Just to get her thoughts on it, because we were religious until she was probably about 6 or 7.
Okay.
So she probably remembers a time when we went to church and stuff like that.
Probably went to Sunday school.
But yeah, I think she probably did. But since then, she hasn't really been exposed to it. Like occasionally, her grandmother would take her to church every now and then. Yeah, so I guess I kind of wanted to like put it out there. Like this is a child's reaction to this perfect holy book or whatever, and she hasn't been like I haven't pushed her into religion because I left religion when she was still very young, but I also haven't pushed her away from religion either. So I kind of just want it like it's obviously it's not pristine, because I have like when you raise a kid you impart some of your worldview onto them whether you try to or not.
Right.
But I just kind of I want to see what the reaction is going to be for a lot of the stuff.
Does she get to ask questions while you read?
Absolutely. That's the point.
Okay.
I want to see what kind of questions she's going to ask, what sorts of things she's going to be picking up on. I have promised her that we're going to skip the begats.
How old is she now?
She is 12 now.
When my daughter was 9, it was around Christmas time, and she came into the office and she just leaned up against the wall and she just gave me this look, this little sassy look. And I said, "What?" And she said, "Daddy, I know Santa Claus isn't real." and she picked it up from school. It's not something that I introduced her to, something that the kids did, and she had her imaginary friends and everything like that. So I went with it. And so I'd done the whole Santa thing, up until this point. And I said, "Oh yeah." I said, "Santa Claus isn't real." And I said, "Well, how do you know that?" And she said, "Because you and Santa use the same wrapping paper."
Nice.
It's like, oh, busted. Okay.
That makes me think of there was a video of Neil deGrasse Tyson, and somebody asked him how he handled that kind of thing with Tooth Fairy or Santa Claus or whatever. And he said that when basically they just kind of turned it into a learning opportunity, kind of like what you did. He just kind of asked, like when she said, "Daddy, is there a tooth fairy?" He said, "What do you think?" And then she's like, and she starts investigating, and she starts coming back and kind of talking to him throughout the process, and just kind of like do the same thing with Jesus,
Yeah. Well, it teaches them critical thinking skills, and so many kids don't get that.
Yeah,
I was so
didn't
proud.
get that.
My 8-year-old
I didn't
recently
either.
lost a tooth and did the.
I was taught,
did the
"You
thing.
can believe this," and my parents were one of those "because I said so."
Yeah.
Well, my 8-year-old recently lost a tooth, and he did the thing where he didn't tell anyone that he lost the tooth, and he wanted to see if the tooth fairy would still forget about it.
That's
a smart one.
Very clever.
That's way
Very
smarter
clever.
than me. I'm sitting here like, I hope she doesn't forget.
Yeah, you better record the mileage on the odometer and lock all the windows at night.
By the time I lost my last tooth, I just like it fell out, and I just walked up to my dad and was like, "Dad, we both know the tooth fairy's not real. Can I just give you the tooth and you give me the money?"
I don't know what you do with them, weirdo, but
I'm one of 7 kids. I got money. I got like $1 or something for like the first tooth, maybe the second, but it didn't happen for long.
I got a dime.
I got the silver dollars.
I've seen some kids nowadays get $20. I'm like,
oh my god, for a tooth?
Yeah,
Jesus.
no.
I'll start knocking out teeth for that.
I mean, in inflation,
Well, it was my job. I was the designated tooth fairy, and on occasion I would forget, and so they'd come out, and this would be at the age where they knew it was fake, but they'd come out and just say, "Well, yeah, were you busy last night?" And it's like, "Yeah, I had stuff to do. Look, here you go."
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I used to give. Purple says that she used to get quarters. I used to give my kids quarters, and I thought that was a lot considering that I got dimes.
Right.
Times.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even get an allowance, so I mean, it's like I had to lose several teeth before I could get anything.
Is anyone else in here Canadian? Would it make sense to you if I said I gave my kids loonies?
No.
What
is that?
It's our $1 coin. We call it a loonie because it has a loony
Ah.
on it.
Oh, I thought you were
Okay.
like Bugs Bunny.
And then
and
our
Roadrunner.
$2 coin is called a toonie because
That makes
it's
sense.
two.
Mhm.
Why don't they call it a oney?
Well, my mother actually says we should. The $2 coin has it. The joke is it's a queen with a bear behind because it's on one side is the queen, on the other side is a bear, polar bear. So my mother says we should call it a berry because the loon is a loony because it's got a loon on it.
Makes
So
sense.
the $2 coin should be a berry.
Yeah, I'll go
Or
with
a
that.
queenie?
Well, they all have the queen on.
Oh, they
it.
all have queen. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're still technically part of the Commonwealth.
Hmm.
We are an
As
independent
are we.
nation, but we have a governor general that, in theory, answers to the queen and rubber stamps all our laws and crap before they're actually official.
So there's no coinage that's accepted coinage with anybody but the queen on it?
No, it's all the queen.
Same here.
Well, she's been around a while though, you know. So
Yeah, she's longest reigning monarch in England's history.
in anyone's history, really.
Yeah.
Thanks
Wow.
to science.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
When my kids were young, I always taught them that, that Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny, I told them from the get-go that these were just pretend. And my reasoning was that I didn't want to tell them that Santa Claus is real, the Tooth Fairy is real, the Easter Bunny is real, and Jesus is real. And then when they found out that Santa Claus wasn't real, the Easter Bunny wasn't real, the Tooth Fairy wasn't real, that they would start thinking that Jesus wasn't real.
Well,
That's actually
and worse yet, my problem was I faced the same thing, but it was I didn't want them to think, Dad, why'd you lie to me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like
I did that as well
Yep.
when I was a Christian. We did the Santa Claus thing, but I never. I told my kids that, like, look, it's for fun. It's make believe. Because I didn't want to lie to my kids, but then we brought them.
I did it because she believed it. She never asked me. Nothing like that. She picked it up at school. And she said, Dad, did you know that if I write a letter to Santa Claus that he'll bring me stuff if I'm good? I said, no, I didn't know that. Tell me more about the Santa Claus. And she did. And she was just infatuated with it for 4 years. Yeah.
This is actually one of interesting thing about kids is that even running the Santa Claus thing, telling them straight up, like, look, it's us buying the presents, it's us wrapping the presents. We make Santa Claus gets hot chocolate with whipped cream on top in our house.
Yeah.
With sometimes a little bit of sweetener in there, rum. But yeah, so my kids know that I drink that, and despite all this, my youngest went through. He might still actually, but he if you ask him, he will tell you that no, Santa's real. Like things that you're telling, like you're telling me that you're buying the stuff. No, it's Santa.
It's like my daughter's imaginary friend. She thought that it was real. I buckled the thing in, like when we'd go somewhere. Would hold its hand if it wanted me to hold its hand or whatever, because that was her. I didn't want to. I wanted her to have an imagination. I wasn't allowed to have one. The only imagination that I had was when I could escape into a book. And I didn't want to stifle that. I didn't seem to be anything wrong with it. Everything I read about said there was nothing wrong with it. And I mean, she eventually just grew out of it. But I never told her, Blue is its name, which had nothing to do with Blue's Clues. Just Blue. That Blue wasn't real, Never told her that, never told her, that, well, stop saying that, I'm not going to buckle Blue in, because he's not real.
Well, yeah, I think there's a purpose to imagination.
Yeah.
I was very impressed with the second Mary Poppins that came out not too long ago.
I haven't seen it.
It's actually, I was not expecting it to be any good because it's obviously the second of a classic, but I actually like it better.
Wow, really? Because I love the first one.
And there's
I
a
never
song
liked the first
about
one.
one of the boys is like, it doesn't make logical sense to do this or whatever. And she's like, well, and so it's just basically a whole song about why imagination is important. And I'm like, that's actually kind of a good point.
Just a spoonful of logic.
Right.
That is one of the things that I talk about with The Handmaid's Tale. It's fiction, and it's it's obviously hyperbole. Yeah. But there is so much going on in our country today that is headed in that direction.
Yeah.
That I keep saying, yes, it's fiction, but it's got a place. It's got a, it makes a good point of saying you do not want to get here.
Well, what happens is you get, it's a small group of people that cook up this plan to overthrow the government. And like the Nazis did, like they did in the Handmaid's Tale, and it works. It doesn't take an entire country for the rules to flip.
Have you seen Man in the High Castle?
I just finished watching it actually.
Yeah,
again,
it's awesome.
Is it based on a novel?
It's like what if the Nazis won? It's
yeah. I mean, it gets a little woo, but it's very well done.
Yeah. I think that taps into what I was saying before about just being able to discern facts and figures, because when I was younger, I would just assume those in power were the right people to be in power. I would figure, okay, so
listen to your elders.
Yeah, I mean, people were voting for these people. The elders knew what they were doing. Therefore, people in power were the right people in power. And then, obviously, as you learn how things work, it's not quite true. So there's that factor as well that I try to instill in my kids in terms of we are very political when we talk about things, especially here in Australia, with our Prime Minister recently admitting that he's receiving signs from God. So this is all coming out now that we're realizing, hey, this is a guy who's running our country who believes that when he looks at a painting of an eagle, it's a sign from God that he's doing the right job. So you sort of say, well, how does this flow into other things like climate change policy and all these other things? For example, he has no climate change policy. Why? Because he doesn't believe any of it. So this is a really big factor that goes into it, especially we're seeing it in the US. We're seeing it here now as well.
Well, I'm certainly not the best father. Don't claim to be, but something that I try to do is try to instill as many positive things that I can do, things that will not only progress and develop her in a positive way, but society as well, and to try to keep her safe for as long as possible from being indoctrinated by views that may not be completely harmful, but that have negative baggage that comes along with it.
Exposure is probably one of the best ways to do that.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And honesty, so some parents they'll tell their kids just whatever, just to get them to shut up, but I find that kids usually don't ask an answer or don't ask a question unless they really want the answer, that they're going to ask you a question that they don't want an answer to.
Yeah, true.
So I've been overthinking parenting, obviously, for the past couple months.
Of course.
And
why?
This is my first too. So I was on a walk a couple months ago, and there was a family that walked past me, and there's a little girl, she's probably 3 or 4. She's walking, and there's an airplane that or a helicopter that flew over us. And she points up and she says, airplane. And her mom's not far behind her, and she says, no, baby, that's a helicopter. And I didn't hear what happened after that, but I just thought about that exchange that I heard. And I was like, to say no first thing when she says that's an airplane, I think is just really discouraging of her to continue trying to identify flying objects. So I thought, it's something like if my kid were to just point something out and be wrong, to maybe ask, well, that's a good guess. That's a really good try. Airplanes fly. What else flies? To kind of give him an opportunity to try to come up with the right answer himself, rather than just say, no, it's this.
Right. Yep.
you know?
Well, and it won't stop at, airplanes or cars or pointing things out. It'll come down to the important things, whenever they're older and they really need to confide in somebody, and they can't.
Yeah. I asked my mom, I actually recently had a conversation with my mom about my childhood, and she feels really bad about a lot of things. And I've just told her, like, I can't be mad at you for not knowing then what you know now. So how about we just move forward and just try to build a relationship now? So if she ever sees the stream, I hope she doesn't take this personally or anything, but there was a point in my life where, I started to hit, things started to change on my body. And I asked her a question about shaving. And I just got a very intense reaction of like, don't do that. And I was just like, oh, not asking you any more questions like that. And I just never asked another question to her.
Right. I mean, most kids, they aren't able to pick up on things like, oh, well, mom's embarrassed, or mom's uncomfortable.
Right.
It's like, oh, like there's something wrong with it. Like, there's something wrong with doing that.
Yeah.
That's right, because that reaction correlates with other reactions where you are embarrassed. So it is that correlation of, oh, okay, this is a bad thing because mum reacted that way with this thing that was bad.
Well, what actually ended up happening was I thought, well, she thinks that's a really bad, embarrassing thing, but none of my friends do. So she's just wrong.
That's good. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I just can't trust your perspective on this.
And that's the thing about kids is like, it's both a good thing and a bad thing, but it's crazy that and how young they start off, but they will draw connections between things, between concepts or ideas that I've never thought of, and I'm just like, wow, like that's you make that association. And then I think about, what associations are they making that they don't tell me, and so it's so being a parent is the hardest job ever. Because it's a job that has so much more at stake than the pockets of the owner of the company.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how many times I've told myself working in this burrito shop, it's just Qdoba. It's just Qdoba. It's just Qdoba.
Oh, my gosh.
One piece of advice I would give you is that there are going to be times when you're going to be that parent that says, no, it's a helicopter. And it's because you're thinking about what are we going to do for dinner? And you're thinking about, I got to get the kid to the car. I've got to go pick another kid up from school. And you just don't have time to explain it all, and forgive yourself when it does, because it's going to happen.
Well, what I've learned from like things like parenting beyond belief was when things like that happen, because like, you're right, I'm going to do things that I didn't intend to do or that I regret later and all that. And so when I realize that I did something that I regret, tell him.
Yes.
Let him learn from it.
And let them know that it's okay to mess up, that you're human too.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with being humble and just admitting when you were wrong.
Exactly.
Yes, because they learn everything from you, and if they see that your pride doesn't allow you to show somebody that you're wrong, but they can clearly see that you were wrong, so they have some sort of inside knowledge, that she makes a small light of dad or whatever, and the kid sees that and sees her get away with it, and it's not even just about the lying, but it's about, well, mom was wrong, but she won't admit that she's wrong. What's up with that?
There was another piece of advice there where I don't know if I completely agree with it, but in a humanistic way, is let them see you cry and let them see you upset, because otherwise they just see you as this invincible, always perfect, always right sort of parent. Whereas if they just see you down once in a while, it's like, that's okay too, because they realize, you get sad too.
Let them know it's okay to talk about it. You don't have to just cry in silence. Let them know that it's okay to talk about feelings that are out of the norm, feelings that we don't feel every day, these really intense feelings, like joy and depression and sadness and anger.
My little sister has raised my nephew up to the point where he's 8 now. And something that I remember about when she was raising him, when he was kind of learning about how to treat others and all that, I remember there's something she used to tell him, and I love it. It was, she would repeat this. She'd be like, it's okay to be mad. It's okay to be sad. It's not okay to be mean.
We do that exact thing
great.
pretty much. We even tell them, like,
Nice.
if you need to hit something, go to your room and hit your pillow. Don't
Right.
hit your brother.
Right. Right.
Well, I'm one of those guys. I fought. I was raised, you knock the shit out of them, but me with my kids, I guess it's one of those things. I run to the extreme. It's like, it's don't, even punching something, what is it helping you? If it helps you, that's fine. That's great. If that helps the problem, but if that doesn't address what the problem is, then let's do that first. And then if it doesn't work, then let's punch something.
Well, so something that I've learned about emotional intelligence is basically when it comes to the punching and the violent lashing out when you're feeling emotional, is that it's good to do things that are physical, like to go on a run until you can't run anymore, to get all that energy out of your body, but not to be careful not to, if you're going to punch something, to not like imagine the person that you're mad at, because then that just translates to violence. But if you just turn it into like a physical exercise, then you exhaust yourself, then it helps. And then you can kind of like take a deep breath. Okay, now let's use our logical part of our brain and try to figure out how to fix this.
And I know kids sometimes get into a feedback loop. Like my daughter will sometimes get mad that she's getting mad at something that she shouldn't be getting mad at.
Right.
Yeah.
And
she gets mad at
they'll just
herself.
psych themselves up, like just get madder, and then like whatever they were mad about, they'll go to school the next day just. Oh, that's hilarious.
But also in the vein of like not hiding things from the kids, like we actually do our finances in front of the like we don't sit them down and be like, okay, it's bill paying time.
Oh.
But like if we're doing our budget spreadsheet or paying bills or whatever, and they come and sit on the couch with us, we don't hide it from them.
Right.
Because that's something like as a kid growing up, I never saw my parents' finances. I remember once I caught a glimpse of their bank account at the ATM and I saw they had a balance of $100, and that made me all excited because, like, to a kid, $100 is a lot of money.
I thought that bills was just one thing that you paid for somebody who let you stay there with their electricity and stuff like that.
Like,
So,
gotta pay the bills. Done.
We do this in front
you're
of
right.
them.
Like, I pay the bills
They-
one shot. Boom, there we go. And it's like, didn't know anything about taxes, until like I started to get my own money mowing yards and stuff, and I go and I buy something. I'm like 99 cents, and they're like $1.07, and I'm like, no, like, what?
Yeah, no, but like we do this because if you make it a taboo subject, then they're not going to have a good understanding of finances when they get to the point where they need to make their own financial decisions, and like. They will now know, like, that we can sit down, if like whatever they see in our bank account, they know that we have categories where we set things aside for this, that, and the other.
Right.
And so they know, like, there might be money in the account, but that doesn't mean we can take you out for dinner right now because there's a bill due on Friday.
Well, I haven't done that because I don't want them to know that I'm broke. But I will do like the allowance thing, so they can at least learn that way.
Yeah. One time older brother borrowed money off younger brother, and we said, look, that's fine. You can borrow money off your younger brother, but there's interest. You will have to pay him back a bit more than what he borrows, right?
We'll break your kneecaps.
The Bible says that's wrong.
I know, but what happened was it took him about 2 months to pay this back. So now he never borrows money anymore. So
man, he's still paying, isn't he?
No, he's done. He paid it off last year, but he it wasn't a lot of money. But the point was, he didn't like paying it back, and he didn't like paying back the interest. So now he just doesn't do it anymore.
Right? It's like, was it worth it?
Absolutely.
And that's something that I've been thinking about, with the concept of like sheltering your kids, like giving your child the impression that the world is perfect and peaceful and it might as well be a fairy tale. That just makes it so much harder once they get out into the real world.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, this is hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think for my parents, I don't think it was that. I think they just didn't care. Like in their mind, it was like, you got your chores at home and then you have school. School teaches you. We don't teach you. That was kind of their mindset.
Yeah, same.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'd like the school to do the teaching again. That would be nice.
I don't know if
Teach me
I
taxes either.
No, well, okay, we used to homeschool years and years ago. Well, like 3 or 4 years ago, I guess. But like when our oldest, she has always been. She's very self-driven. So like we could just put the book in front of her. She would read the book and then she'd do the work. And if she got to a part where she was having trouble, she'd ask us a question. We'd clarify, and then she'd finish the work. She basically taught herself. And then when but then when our middle child got to the age where it was like more complicated stuff than just like 1+1, he started getting to the point where like he doesn't take instruction from his parents very well. Like he would fight us on everything. And so we always like we went into the homeschooling thing with the idea that like, okay, as soon as it looks like it's having a negative impact on our kids' education, straight to school they go. Because their education is more important than my ideals about homeschooling or whatever that I might have had. So we sent them to school, and he did much better in school. But if there's one thing that one positive that we've taken from the pandemic, it's that we made the right choice, because it's been so hard getting him to actually do his work. Is he doesn't respond to us. He
Well, so many
responds well to
people-
his teachers.
Yeah, we all learn so differently. And like that's something that I figured out, is that's why I didn't do well in school and I had no interest in school, is because I don't learn that way. I go in rabbit holes. And so like when you're telling me about this one war and then you mention this one warrior, I get curious about that warrior and I want to be able to stop and learn more about that warrior. And it just kind of helps me build a picture in my head.
Yes.
You can't do that if you're going to school, with 30 other kids in the classroom.
The only reason that I passed, that I graduated high school, was because I was a great test taker. But I
Same.
hated homework. I would always lose my homework just because, like, I don't even know why. It's just because there was nobody there to teach me. And it's like, well, I already know this, so why do I have to do it?
I just didn't care.
Yeah, I really didn't either, because it's like, well, yeah. I know this. I'm not going to prove that I know this. I'll wait until the test and I'll prove it then.
As a teacher, that's the biggest challenge. Why are we doing this, sir? Why are we doing this? And
I always hated art class.
Well, so what do you say, Mr. Bear, when somebody asks you that?
What do I say?
It's kind of helped me in grad school, though. It's like when I was in high school, like if I didn't know something, I would study it, study for the test. And college was and has been, much the same way. It's just, especially my PhD program, I found that going into the PhD program, it's so research heavy, and you're working by yourself instead of with a group, that you're used to, and you're completely dependent on yourself for learning, and that is where I thrive.
Jenna, to answer your question, what I do is I tell, whenever a student says to me, "Why are we doing this, sir?" I'll say to them, because I'm about to show you something you never knew before. And what I will do is target that student, knowing what they know or what they want to know, where their interest lies, and just show them something that they will really love. So if we're in woodwork, for example, I know that there's a kid in my class who loves baseball. So I'll say, because I'm going to show you how to turn a baseball bat. And he'll be like, "Wow, what? Really?" And I say, yeah, next week we'll do a baseball bat. And he's like, "Cool, okay." And it's like, okay, this is why we're here, to show you how to do things that you never knew what to do before. So it's targeting students, to just knowing your students really well and targeting with what gets them going and what they want. And sometimes you may not even get to that until later, but it keeps them going.
That's genius.
I learned that too when I was involved in a program where I was helping students that were way behind in reading. And I was working with this one young man he was in 5th grade and he was reading on a 1st grade level. And you gave him, you pulled out books that were first grade level, and he was having difficulty reading them. But as soon as you pulled out a book on a Black sports star, and he was a young Black boy, all of a sudden he could read.
Wow.
Because now he was interested. Now he wanted to know about this sports star. And I ended up combing that library. There weren't anywhere near enough books that were like 4th, 5th grade level that were on Black sports stars. They were very hard to find. So, but yeah, as long as that's what we were reading, he was learning.
Well, something along those lines is that maybe it could also have something, and I don't know the situation, obviously, but it could also have something to do with he probably is more familiar with some of the words that they're using in the sports context rather than the book that they're trying to show him. And so, like, for example, if you were to try to teach me Spanish, I've worked in kitchens and picked up a lot of Spanish lingo, but it's mostly in kitchen context. So it's dealing with food or utensils or something like that. And so if I were to really try to learn Spanish, it'd be really good for me to start with that kind of context.
That's a great analogy.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've worked in restaurants too. I don't know what mise en place means, but I know what it is.
Sounds fancy.
What does ontan los huevos mean?
Well, I worked at fancy French restaurants, so.
Ooh. Oui.
But they talk about that on Worst Cooks in America too.
Yeah. Basically, in most restaurants, it's just used to mean your setup, something that you're getting ready, so that you don't have to do it at the time.
How is that even a show? Is there any other show that people watch where people are just bad at something?
There's like Worst Cakes show.
Worst Cakes?
Like,
I don't know that. Oh, is it like a decorating one?
Yeah.
No, that's funny. That's funny. But I mean, they are good decorators, but like with the time constraints and the ingredients and stuff, like I think that's funny. Like when you put somebody in a position where they're, under stress and they're, trying to get something done or whatever, the results are either fantastic or hilarious. But like the Hell's Kitchen, I love Hell's Kitchen.
I used to work with a chef who went on Top Chef Canada.
Nice.
What?
Interesting.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He didn't win. He got kicked off for screwing up the lentils.
Oh,
Gotta keep up.
watch
with
those
those.
lentils.
It was like he was so focused on other stuff that like lentils are just a basic thing, but he forgot to put them on time, so they weren't quite.
And
no.
it's usually the scallops that gets them,
Oh, he could
Changing
Or the
the
risotto.
subject. Changing the subject a bit. I am curious, Vice Rhino, if you think that we are actually making any kind of progress. Are there fewer young Earth creationists today than there were, say, 10 years ago?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, like all the numbers are showing that like religious belief is on a decline, church attendance is on a decline, stuff like that. I this is my job, making videos about young Earth creationism. I hope there comes a time when I have to find something else to do because it's just not relevant anymore. Like I'm actively working to put myself out of a job.
That's what we're doing with the Atheist Experience.
Yeah, but
Don't worry, Vice. You can always segue into Islamic scholars.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Plenty of those.
Well, this actually, I'm kind of transitioning, like not transitioning. I'm still going to cover the young Earth stuff, but I don't go to the evolution stuff quite as often as I used to. I still mostly deal with young Earth creationists, but I'll do more with their theological arguments and stuff because young Earth creationism is becoming irrelevant, but there's still a huge chunk of the population that is religious. And it's like, I'm not trying to take away anyone's religion, but at the same time, I don't really see religion as a force for good. So if you lose your religion, then start dealing with people as if they're important just because they're human beings, then that is an improvement. Now you can still believe in God if you want, but I want you to like actually think through like, why do I have the moral system that I have? Is it because God told me to, or is it because I've examined it and come to some sort of objective conclusion based on a goal with other people? And that's one of the things I've noticed in morality videos is that apologists love to go to the big ticket items like, would you agree that torturing babies for fun is always bad?
I hate that question.
Well, yeah, but what about stealing paper clips from work?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Some people would
always
say
tell them
that's
no.
fine. Other people say it's wrong.
That's right.
I always
which
tell
is
them
it?
no.
Like,
I point out the Aztecs and the Incans, for example. The Aztecs and the Incans, whenever they had a drought, they would torture a child and before they would sacrifice it, and they believed that the more pain they inflicted, the more tears, and the louder the child screamed, that the more pleased the god would be.
yes, but I think we can all agree here that that was a wrong thing to do.
Right. But what I'm saying is, it's an argument against objective morality.
Yeah. But the way I look at it is like I have kind of a subjective objective morality, if that makes sense. So it's like it is subjective in that it is opinion based, but like when we have a shared goal of like I want to increase well-being and decrease suffering.
Sure.
If we can agree on that shared goal, then you can objectively measure any action against that goal and see whether it got you closer to the goal of improving well-being or further away from the goal and increasing suffering.
Right.
So with that measuring stick, we can say that no, these people were doing morally wrong things objectively by this subjectively chosen measurement.
Well, I would say that it's relative because it's only relative to that context, because once you step outside of that circle of people, then it no longer applies. It only applies if everybody agrees.
Well, yeah, but everybody here, I think, would agree with that, though. So, like, we could, like, this. I'm not saying they would have thought it was wrong. I'm saying that we can examine this and say, from our perspective, with this shared goal, that was objectively wrong.
Absolutely.
So, like, I agree that it's relative, but also it's objective at the same time. And
that's a really good answer to the Christian response on slavery when they say, well, slavery was okay in biblical days because at that time it was a financial need. That just points out that the morality of it is subjective. It was okay then, but it isn't okay now. That it's not I don't want to use the word objective because that word, has different connotations, different meaning, but it's not one fixed concept for all time.
Well,
but I don't know that it was okay then.
But
No.
that's
helpful
a bad
to differentiate
argument, though.
between
Like, even if it was good for the economy, the fact is that the economy got to that level because of the slaves. And so, I mean, it's kind of like the antebellum South. The people who are arguing against emancipation. They say, well, who's gonna pick our cotton and stuff? Like, we're gonna lose all of our money. Exactly.
It's a monster
It's like,
that feeds itself.
Just because they did it,
we're
I
not
don't
saying
think that made it good.
right. It's like saying, no, we're not saying that you can't grow cotton. We're saying that you can't own people and make them pick it for you.
Right.
Rhino, what were you going to say?
I was going to say sometimes in conversations like this, it's helpful because I know this is a confusion that I've had in the past, but to make sure we differentiate between objective morality and absolute morality.
That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, that was the word.
Absolute morality is like this thing is always moral, regardless of any circumstances at all times. And that one's actually pretty easy to dismantle, even for Christians, because like it's very clearly like killing someone can be moral in some circumstances if it's self-defense or something like that. But it's like it depends on the situation. There are situations that can justify killing someone. But like you can also do the same thing and use the objectively measuring it against what your goals are. Like the increasing well-being and decreasing harm. Like this guy was about to kill my entire family, so in self-defense I killed him. You like I did him harm, so that increased harm, but I increased well-being to my family more. So it's kind of cold and calculating, but at the same time, I don't know, it works. I think it works.
Mm-hmm. That actually reminds me of like a trolley cart question that I kind of thought of earlier that I'm kind of stumped on. And it's like, how when you do it, it's like if you have, a baby on the track versus 3 adults, which is worse kind of thing, right? Well, I wonder when you raise the scale of that, is it okay? Is it better to kill millions to save billions?
I mean, mathematically speaking,
really hard
yes.
One. Yeah.
I mean, at what point do you stop remaining neutral?
I'd have to question like what scenario would possibly result in that sort of hypothetical. Because like if you want to talk about the trolley problem, we can just look at COVID-19 and the vaccine. So like the vaccine,
Exactly.
some of the vaccines have caused a couple deaths. I did the calculation. I think the Johnson & Johnson was something like 0.0000004% of people that got it died. So then you do the trolley problem. People are saying, "Oh, I'm not getting the vaccine because if you go get the vaccine, there's a chance that you'll die." It's like, okay, well, what's the death rate for COVID? About 1% to 2%, depending on which numbers you're looking at and how it's calculated. Because death rate's a really complicated thing that I don't want to get into. But like just from a straight numbers perspective. But people psychologically, people don't like to take actions that can result in a death.
That's what I was saying.
Not taking action and has a bigger chance of resulting in a death.
Or will
So
doing harm. So not necessarily debating on whether or not you should take the vaccine, but whether or not you should kill somebody.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. That kind of like just killing one person is just so hard to grasp, so to consider the fact that say you're on this political team and you're looking at climate change or something like that, and it looks like it appears with several different verified scientists that say that in order to save billions you need to kill this group of million people. It's like, I don't know that it's just that kind of thing. I just kind of
well, it's part of the reason why we have manslaughter and murder and so on. That's the very reason why we have that in the legal system. Well, in our legal system anyway, right? Is to differentiate intent and will, right? So if it's premeditated murder and you can prove that, then that's different from manslaughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean that's the question though, right? Is where does the morality lie? Does it lie in the intent, in the means, or in the end?
Right.
Exactly. That's why it's so difficult.
If you remain neutral, if you don't do anything,
is that an act? Does that count?
Well, doesn't circumstance come into that, right? It's how you know the person, how the circumstances around the event, right? That legal case. That's what happens in a legal case, right?
It's irrelevant if you do nothing. If you do nothing, it still happens. And it's like, well, did you allow it to happen because that was sorry?
Yeah.
Like anti-vaxxers, they choose to just try to remain neutral and just not take it, and they don't realize the harm that they're doing by doing that.
Well, it's like
and those who believe, sorry.
Yeah, well, it's like the people who picket, and they say don't get your vaccines versus the people who don't believe that they should get vaccines, but they don't picket. Is one better than the other?
I mean, you look at eschatology, people who believe that, well, we shouldn't do anything to change anything. So,
you would think that, but people still bring their car to the mechanic.
They do, actually. Yes.
I was trying to find the chapter. I have AIG's Demolishing Supposed Bible Contradictions books here, and in one of these books, I can't find it, but they have a whole chapter on why the hypothetical situation of should you lie to a Nazi to save a Jew that you have hidden in your your house. Yeah, their answer is no. You should tell the truth. Because telling the truth
that's absolutism.
Is always right, because they believe in absolute morality.
Yeah.
And God must have a plan for that person being caught and getting in the way of God's plan by lying.
See, this whole lying thing, I just don't get, because I willfully lied to my dying grandparent because she asked me, do I look fine? She was very proud of her appearance. The fact was, no, she didn't look fine at all. She was withdrawn. She was dying. But I told her, I said, you look great. You look, you look fine. And so I'm willfully lying for her well-being. She felt great after that. So where does the line drawn,
The other thing I look at is toddlers lie, and they don't do it with malicious intent. And if you believe in the age of accountability, God isn't going to hold that against them because they haven't reached the age of accountability. So obviously God is okay with certain lies, but not with other lies.
As long as it's not the day before your 12th birthday.
That's actually something I go into in my videos coming out tomorrow morning. But
cool.
There's actually a segment in the Old Testament where God forgives a whole bunch of people
Yeah.
And it explicitly says there's like they didn't make a sacrifice to me, but I chose to forget their sins and forgive them.
Yeah. Well,
And
at,
it's like
Sure.
at one point he
So-
says that I didn't want
Almost
this
discretionary.
sacrifice.
yeah.
Mm.
So God can forgive without
Yeah.
without people being Christian, without believing in Jesus, without the Jesus
Absolutely.
sacrifice. So
It's almost arbitrary.
Mhm.
it's my video tomorrow is ambitious. I'm quite I put a lot of work into it. It's I go through the Bible and I basically use Bible passages to disprove God,
Well,
essentially. Like
Nice.
it's like, this is how the Bible defines God, and then this is how the Bible also defines God, and those two definitions contradict.
I think that regardless of the belief, and whatever implications it has, that the real issue lies behind whether or not you can change that belief or whether you can be open to new information. So I think the problem isn't, having the wrong belief, because we all have wrong beliefs. I think the problem is having a dogmatic mindset, that this can't be wrong and it can't be questioned. I think that's when we start running into problems.
Yeah.
I think the word absolute just, ugh.
Yeah. Right. It makes you think of Darth Dawkins.
Yeah.
Hey, on that quickly, I recommend Dr. Josh's talk with Darth Dawkins the other day.
That's great.
I listened to it yesterday. Did you hear that? Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. Did you watch
Yeah.
their Skylar and him review it?
No, not yet. But
The-
Darth
on-
was actually quite gracious in that. It was amazing.
Cool.
Well, yeah. Well, Josh,
He does that.
early out, he put him in his pocket pretty quick.
He did.
Josh is my go-to guy for I'm making an argument that's based on the Hebrew word. Can you make sure that I'm not saying something incredibly dumb?
Yeah. Yeah. I tried to go to him for cuneiform, and he's like, "Yeah, well, let me get my book. Well, I'm not an expert. So
Yes, you are.
Oh, it can be the simplest question. He'll be like, let me just verify that first. I want to look it up,
Yeah.
make sure that it was like, you are the expert, man. Like you got your PhD.
he's incredibly humble, and if anybody's watching, I'm totally joking. I'm just screwing with Dr. Josh. He's
He's
very
like-
very intelligent.
He's almost humble to a fault, isn't he? He's that.
I mean, I wouldn't even say
to use an old term. Yes.
I wouldn't say to a fault, because that's what made him admire me so much, and we became friends so
Yeah.
quickly because I admired something in him that I felt like I needed to emulate more, and that was
Definitely.
his hesitancy to be too certain.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm. I can't wait till I know stuff.
Oh, you about to know something?
Oh, one of the hardest parts of my job at this point is if I getting into arguments that I've dealt with before is like, oh, I know how to counter this one. I always include sources in my video, so now I have to find that source that I used 3 years ago that I don't remember specifically.
Yeah.
See, that's
Yep.
I don't get how you do that, how you keep track of, because I use so many different sources and I bounce so much and I talk to so many people and I learn so much from different people, and I'm like, so I don't know where I heard this thing.
I usually, like, if I'm doing that, I will try to find it. Like I have a few sources bookmarked, but I'll try to find it from scratch again, because I've found that way
Oh.
sometimes I will find additional information that's like, oh, by the way, this other study came out recently that said that one wasn't quite as
Oh.
accurate as that. So it's a good way to stay up to date on the information is by not just
I
going
recommend
back to the
Mendeley.
same source.
I like your brain.
Download Mendeley or Zotero. I have all my stuff. If I have notes or something like that, I can go back and just go to the topic, and boom, they're all right there together.
What are you talking about? Mendeley or what?
Mendeley or Zotero, Zotero.
What are these things?
They are data management software. Basically, you can organize your PDFs, search through your PDFs, your notes. You can put your notes together. They automatically cite the sources for you.
Mendeley.
Yeah, Mendeley.
I haven't heard of that one. I'll note that
I
down.
can't find it online either.
It saved my butt in grad school. Mendeley.
Oh, desktop. Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's red, I think.
Yes.
Low latency
Okay.
forwarding and caching algorithms for information-centric networks.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And what was the second one?
Zotero.
ERO.
Zotero.
Ah,
That's a
The
Z.
Z-
I
the
don't know
Z
which
is
way.
very
I don't know what a
important.
Z is, but it sounds like an alien.
You know what? I will advocate that, like, our superfluous U's in words like color and odor and stuff like that. I'll admit that those are unnecessary. I still use them. I still like them. But Z is useful because there's already enough letters that end with the E sound that it's hard to tell which one you're saying. So this just takes one more of those out of the equation.
like you don't have to say Z for zebra.
Yeah, like if I say Z, everybody knows what letter I'm talking about. If you say
Right.
Z, you might have misheard it as C or D or E.
We can also call it drunk in.
I wouldn't know what you're talking about. I'd be like, what?
Wait for it. Wait for it.
I used to work in call centers, and using the phonetic alphabets like that, I never memorized the military one or whatever. So I just come up with words on the top of my head. And there was one time on a call when I couldn't think of the letter or of a word that started with U. So it was like U as in underwear. It's like I could have stopped at under. That's a word, but I kept going.
I was in the Navy, so I still have all that in here. I actually still go by military time, at least in my truck and my watch, but the computer is regular.
Well, when I did my my flight school, the limited flying that I did was in it was in a DA-20 aircraft with the call sign Delta Alpha India. So that was the extent of my military phonetic alphabet.
So at least you knew a couple letters.
Whiskey Tango Foxtrot.
Yeah, I know.
I know that one.
Hey, there's a movie named that.
I could do it all. I always thought the dumbest ones were golf and hotel. I'm like, and
Yeah.
and
think of a better word?
what you would think would be papa is papa, and Quebec. It's like, what is this? Like,
It's like, and you're using like Greek alphabet for the first few characters, and like
Right.
like hotel, like golf is not that for. Let's see, they go
Right.
Alpha,
Yeah.
Bravo,
Beta,
Charlie,
Charlie.
Delta, Epsilon, Foxtrot, and then golf.
foxtrot, breakdance, two-step.
Golf.
Foxtrot kind of broke it though too.
I like Foxtrot.
Yeah, it is.
Foxtrot sounds like two letters.
Yeah, it does.
Well, we are getting close to our hour and a half time, and so I always like to give everyone at the end of the program a time to talk about anything that they might have coming up, something they want to show for, or someone that they want to promote. So let's go ahead and give everyone a chance to do that. Mr. Bear, what do you have coming up?
Hi. Well, I'm trying to start a regular live stream each week because I've got some time pressures on me. I'm trying to write a third novel. So I'm going to just start a regular stream responding live to videos and just having a link so people can join me, similar to Pine Creek, what Pine Creek does. It just has a room where people can come in and just chat. So I'm going to try to do that from here on in and see how that goes.
Now, the books that you have out, the novels, what is the name of the author? Is it your personal name or is it a pen name or?
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're under my real name. So look, I'll
Okay.
probably do a Vice Rhino in future and evolve into a different kind. But until then, yeah, I'll just they're on the back burner.
Okay, very good. Jenna, I know what you have coming up. You've got a baby on the way.
I do have a baby on the way, and he's due on the day of we're supposed to stream Ethan and Jenna show. So I probably won't be there for that one, but on Thursdays we're doing the Ethan and Jenna show to, again, normalize conversation around mental health. And it's a Pierre Collins show, so everybody's welcome to call in and share their stories. And you can use an alias if you're talking about something embarrassing. And then, yeah, keep an eye out for more stuff that I've got coming. I have some that's done and some that's not done yet, but either way, I'm going to come back. I'm really excited to get my brain back. So.
I think you're going to need a few weeks to get the baby on a schedule first, though.
Don't hopefully we don't.
Okay, Jim, what do you have coming up, or what would you like to shill for? You're muted, Jim.
Well, that explains a lot. Let's see, what do I have coming up? Most likely a live stream. You can subscribe, and I would love it if you would. YouTube.com/Jim Majors. Or you can follow me on Twitter at @TheJimMajors. Just honestly, I'm just waiting for them to set my oral defense date and graduate, after which I will be teaching Hebrew wisdom literature in the spring semester.
Okay, very good.
Can I just say that Dr. Majors sounds amazing?
I don't know. I'm thinking like if they must put the doctor, I think Dr. Jim is fine. Dr. Majors just sounds like it's like Dr. Majors is official. Not my father because he was an idiot.
That you could do shows with Josh and be Dr. Jim and Dr. Josh.
Hey, there's an idea.
That sounds dangerous.
So, Vice Rhino, what do you have coming up?
Well, I definitively prove that there is no God tomorrow, so we can all stop what we're doing.
Okay.
Good.
No, it's very specific, but yeah. So no, I've got that. I've got the podcast coming out with my daughter. We haven't recorded anything yet. We'll probably recording the first thing this weekend. I'm not sure when that's going to start releasing. I'm still kind of I haven't even figured out what to call it yet. I'm trying to find like music and crap to put in it to make it actually interesting to listen to. So yeah, that will be coming eventually. But yeah, that's pretty much it. My podcast, my YouTube channel, and my upcoming podcast.
Okay, very good. I put out an extra video this week that I put together very suddenly yesterday over a political situation that occurred that I found really very surprising. What it was is, if you've heard the story about Eric Swalwell's lawsuit against Representative Mo Brooks is my congressman. And Mo Brooks has been hiding from Eric Swalwell and from the process servers for the last couple of months. They've had a lot of difficulty in serving this lawsuit. And so Swalwell ended up hiring some private investigators to serve this suit. And they were finally able to serve it, and they served it on his wife. And on Twitter, I made the comment to my representative that, well, maybe they wouldn't have had to if you had not been hiding behind your wife's skirt. For which my representative deleted my tweet and blocked me on Twitter in violation of my First Amendment rights.
Wow.
Yeah. So I made a second Twitter account just so I could see what it was. So if you get an invitation from a parakeet named Simon, that's me. And so I've been kind of keeping an eye on what Mo Brooks is up to through that second account. But in the meantime, I've sent an email to Mo Brooks and asked him to please unblock me on Twitter because that is a violation of my rights. And President Trump was sued over that very issue, and he lost.
Yeah,
because
you'd have to find him to serve him first.
That's exactly it. Is I am trying to decide if it is worth the trouble to sue him over this, because if Eric Swalwell, with all of the resources available to him, had that much difficulty serving him with process, I think I would have even more difficulty than he did.
You might be able to draw more attention though, because you might be able to, being as you're a citizen, you're a constituent. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It might actually be easier for me to serve the suit myself. The only thing is I don't know that I can be the one to sign the affidavit because of the conflict of interest.
Interesting.
Mm. So that was an interesting situation that came up. And I do have a video that I'm trying to put out this week, and it might be a little bit late because I did put everything on hold to address that situation. And it actually is a little bit similar to the one you're doing, Vice Rhino, because I'm looking at people talk about God being full of love and being full of grace and being full of glory. And if most people are not saved and only a few are saved, and the saved ones are supposed to be the vessels of his glory and grace, what is God really full of?
Shit.
Exactly.
Exactly where I went to.
Yeah, that's
Did
the
I
one
say that
thing.
out loud?
You make me just hear the what is God
Out
full
loud
of?
voice.
I'm like, I can fill in the blank with that.
Yeah.
That was my intent, to let people fill in the blank themselves. Yep.
Well, I mean, if you ever want to get a really intense picture of God's loving nature, just read Deuteronomy 28 sometime. That's the it's like the first paragraph tells you what blessings you'll get if you love God and follow God, and then the remaining like 7 or 8 paragraphs tell you the curses you'll get if you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And
Nah,
it's
but
got
Viced, I was told today that was the Old Testament, and God recognized that he had to send Jesus to atone for all that. So I had it on good
literally-
authority.
okay, probably
Good authority.
there's a lot of
Twitter.
bad shit in there, but probably one of the worst ones is like, he will say, like, you will become betrothed to a woman and then someone else will rape her. Like, so he's going to have your fiance raped as a punishment for you not loving him.
Or as a punishment
Because
for
your
something
fiance is
ancestors
your
did.
property, obviously.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's
I
like,
mean,
it's
if you really
He's going
want
to
somebody
taint your property.
if you really want somebody to attest to it, just ask Noah's neighbor. Oh wait.
did Noah love his neighbors like he's supposed to?
I don't know.
I guess
Well-
Jesus hadn't written that one yet.
He
He didn't save them, so
he was busy playing PlayStation or something.
Yeah,
Not now, Dad.
he
I'm
was busy
busy.
shoveling shit. Like that's all he was. That's all he had to do is the whole thing. Like, I mean, I
He got
guess
tired of people
eventually they'll
worshiping him,
stop
I guess.
shitting from lack of being fed, but
Like, what is God's schedule like? Do you think he wakes up in the morning to get worshipped, or do you think it's just like a 24/7 thing?
I mean,
Like he can't go to sleep because there's people like praising him. He's like, God.
I mean, he kind of screwed up when he made the Earth round, because now like there's somebody awake at all times to
Hey, he kept slipping off the firmament.
yeah.
Well, that's one question I have about, the Bible says that your sin is separated from you as far as the east is from the west, but the east and the west meet at the prime meridian. There is no separation between the east and the west.
No, not according to my
Is this all
math.
just a big joke that, hey, there really is no God taking away your sin? It was all a
You
joke.
know, the east turtle and the west turtle.
Well, anyway, so each of us have had a chance to tell you what's going up, and we've already gone through our full 90 minutes, and I know some people have schedules to keep, and so I don't want to keep this any longer, but thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Mr. Bear. Thank you, Jenna. Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Vice Rhino. It has been an absolute pleasure having each one of you.
Thank you.
thanks very much.
Thanks for
Thanks.
having us.
It's been great. Thank you.
And thank you to everyone in the chat who has done a lot to add to the conversation. I love you all, and thank you so much for all of the support that each one of you gives me. And just want to say to everyone, live your life. Bye.